For a bit of context, this happened years ago back when I worked at my local theater. Being locally owned, it wasn't and still isn't nearly as big as your big corporation theaters like AMC, but it still had 10 different screens, mostly with stadium-style seating, but some with recliners as well. It is pretty well maintained and updated, too. It's not old or dingy feeling at all. I have never been super gung-ho on believing the paranormal, but I've never straight up denied it either. Most of my family is the same way, but my mom is pretty into that kind of thing. Also noteworthy, my older sister had worked at the same theater a few years before me. At the point I encountered the ghost, I had only been working there a few months. I am not a night person, so up until this point I hadn't ever worked a closing shift. I know, stereotypical, spooky night shift kind of stuff, but it just so happened to work out like that. Either way, it was probably around 11:30 p.m., and Theater 6, being at the back of the main hallway, had just let out its final showing for the night. My manager asked if I could go clean it well, and take out the trash so it was good to go in the morning. Of course, that was my job, so I did. I walked into the theater with my broom and dustpan, and started sweeping up loose popcorn, straw papers, the usual. I work up the first few rows of seats, nothing unusual, but then as I hit the third or fourth row, I see a black figure of what looked like a man watching me from the top right section of the theater. At first I thought maybe I was so absorbed staring under the seats for trash that I somehow didn't notice that someone hadn't left the theater yet, but as soon as I looked up there was nothing there but empty seats. I was a little weirded out, but chalked it up to me being a bit tired from working a bit later than I am used to, and kept going. Soon after, I reached the first of 2 rows of premium seats, being the recliners. We had to wash those off with a wet rag, so they are a bit more time-consuming to clean. As I'm bent over one of these recliners scrubbing some gunk off of it, I once more see a black figure, but this time it is much closer, and walks directly behind me. Just then, I feel a tap on my shoulder like somebody is trying to get my attention. Once again, I reason that maybe my manager walked in and needs something, so I turn around and audibly ask if they need something, only to once again be met with an empty room behind me. Now I'm starting to think something weird is up, and I didn't like it. Now that fear is set in, I can't stop feeling chills go down my spine like crazy, and I'm always scanning the room for activity. I'm pretty much running down the rows of seats, and only stopping if I see a very obvious mess. I do the exact same thing with the second row of recliners at the top of the theater, almost entirely foregoing washing them down. As I finish cleaning in the top row, I once again see the figure behind me, since I am standing only about 2 rows directly above where I saw it the first time. It wasn't a particularly threatening figure in retrospect. The worst it ever did was tap on my shoulder, but it was late and I was tired, and I didn't have the time nor energy to deal with a needy ghost. As such, I book it down the left set of stairs, grabbed the trash can and ran out of the theater. I said nothing about this to any of my co-workers or managers, mostly because I didn't want to sound crazy. However, after going home I told my mom about the situation, and being paranormally intrigued, for a lack of a better term, she was quite into the story, and then told me, "I think your sister said that one of the theaters is haunted before. You'll have to tell her this." At this time, my sister was home from college, so I went and told her the story, at which point she looks at me with a clearly surprised expression and asks me, "You mean none of the managers ever told you the story of how Theater 6 is haunted?" At which point I told her obviously not. I nearly just shat myself cleaning that theater thinking I was losing my mind. So, to wrap up, after talking to the oldest of my managers, she informed me that an old man died of a heart attack in Theater 6 while watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre many moons before, and apparently his name was Tom. It just so happens that workers find that the trash can in that theater loves to fall over randomly, even while they are present in the theater, and it seems like I'm the lucky employee who had the pleasure of actually meeting Tom. It took some courage to go into that theater alone again after that incident, but I actually started to enjoy it after a while, and I would always try and ask Tom how his day was, if he liked seeing the same movie 30 times over, and that kind of thing, in the hopes that maybe I would meet him again. Whether it be a good thing or not, I never did.